Hey there, and welcome to the Business of Business podcast. Here we are two daughters and their dad, seeking to inspire and educate you to follow your dreams of being in business by teaching you the business of being in business. The good, the bad, the humor are all parts of our unique perspective as an entrepreneurial family. Thanks for joining us. So grab a coffee, turn up the volume. Here we go.
Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Business of Business podcast, Two Daughters and Their Dad. I'm your host, Stacey J. Dempsey, and the J is very important. It's what brings all the joy. We have with us today, we're super fired up that we have with us today, Christina Samyan of Joyful Restoration. Good morning to you, Christine.
Good morning. How are you?
Christina, I'm sorry.
Just call me Tina.
To
Just call me Tina. Christina, but just call me Tina.
You got it, Tina. You got it. Well, good morning to you, and thank you so much for being on our podcast this morning. And by the way, because I'm just so excited to get into the conversation with Tina, I forgot to let our listeners know that per usual, we do have the dad and the other daughter, Jack and Jennifer. Good morning to the two of you.
Morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
I'm so excited. I was just getting ready to talk to Tina, just me and her, but I guess, I'll let you guys, I'll let you guys chime in on the, I know, right? Let you guys chime in on the conversation. But anyway, so Tina, why don't you tell us a little bit about your business, Joyful Restoration, and a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I am a licensed clinical social worker. I've been in practice for, going on 20 years now. And I focus a lot on post-traumatic stress disorder, a lot of trauma, and a lot of people that are in recovery from addiction and the families of people that are in recovery and things like that. So I do marriage counseling and relationship counseling, and then I also do a lot of trauma work. I do a specialty practice called eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, which is EMDR, which is really effective for people who have whatever type of trauma, whether it's veterans or sexual assault or domestic violence or, whatever, current, stuck pattern is kind of in there, you can use EMDR with. So that's the majority of my practice. And of course, sometimes I see kids and teenagers and general life issues. And I do a lot of coaching too with people who just have a hard time staying on track. So, it might not be your typical counseling, but they come in, maybe every other week or once a month, just be like, here's where I'm at, and this is what I'm going through. And where do you think I need to kind of like pick up some speed with? And what am I, here's where I'm struggling to find motivation. I think I might have a block here. So I do a lot of like discovery work, like a lot of detective work to try to figure out like, what are your emotional blocks? What are your silent agreements and things like that are kind of keeping you stuck and moving forward in your life with whether it's your career, your spirituality, your relationships, whatever. So, a side note, I'm also a board certified Christian counselor. So I do a lot of Christian counseling as well. A lot of spiritual formation work, people who are struggling with their relationship with God and struggling with their spirituality and don't understand like how to kind of resolve anger and unforgiveness and just loss of hope and things like that. So a lot of trying to like help people to reconnect with God as well. Does that answer your question?
That answers, wow, that's amazing. Yes, it most definitely answers our question. And those are really amazing things. And as you're sitting here, like rattling off all these things that you've done, I'm like, well, I've taken part in something like that, and I have done that, and it's all been very beneficial. So I can speak to those things, certainly helping me out in my life. So tell our listeners kind of how all of this came to be, and what made you, choose to be in this career for almost 20 years.
So, I guess I've always been like a really curious person. I'm always curious about God. I was raised Catholic, and, a lot of times for me, spirituality was always very powerful and very fascinating to me. And I didn't understand a lot of the whys in the church and in Christianity in general and stuff like that. So, that combined with I grew up in a home that there was a lot of addiction. So a lot of alcoholism and drug addiction and a lot of mental health issues and stuff like that. So there was just this combination in me of just very strong curiosity, like, why are these people like this, and why are they torturing me, and why are we going through this next thing, and where's God in all of this, and why did he just abandon me, and like, and why can't these people figure this out, and what's going on? And so like there has always been a very curious side of me that just wanted to understand the way things worked. And so when I was I guess my mom and dad divorced when I was around 10, and then 9, 10, something like that. And then immediately my mom married another alcoholic. So then I started going to like 12-step meetings when I was like 12 years old. And so I would hear terms like borderline personality disorder and alcoholism and the 12 steps. So this began my, like, well, what is all this, and what does this mean, and how does this affect me, and stuff like that. So and then also, side note, I don't know why, but like, I guess because I am intuitive by nature, people would always come to me with their problems and their issues and stuff like that. So I knew at 14 years old, like, I was supposed to be a counselor. I knew very early on that this was my journey, although I didn't really want it to be necessarily. I wanted to be a singer, but God had other plans. So anyway, at 14 years old, I had an uncle who I love dearly, who actually paid attention to what I said when I said I wanted to be a counselor. And he was a maintenance guy at the time, and he was working for a psychiatrist. And so he said, well, I want you to meet this lady, and you can talk to her about this, and maybe she'll give you some direction. So I said, great. So then I talked to her. I don't even remember. It was sometime in early high school. I said, listen, all I want to do is listen to people's problems and then help them figure out what's going on. And so she's like, all right, well, this is what you do. You become a licensed clinical social worker. That's your quickest and fastest path to this. So I was like, great, that's what I'll do. So I knew that's what I was supposed to do early on. And so then all throughout high school, or it's like college, I went right into school for psychology. But unfortunately, there was a lot of pain that kept happening in my household and stuff like that. So there was lots of moving, and I went to like 4 different high schools and all kinds of stuff. And I did go to college for psychology, but then when I graduated, I was like really tired and I wanted to retire. And so then I went to New York City to become a singer. So like, then eventually I went back to school to get my master's degree. But like, it was only after God forced me to, because I really didn't want to do it anymore. But if that makes sense to you, but that's how it kind of came to be. It's like, I had always just a very strong intuition. And then I was always kind of like I just felt like I was just kind of kept like looking for the next solution. So like, I was like, all right, well, I'm just going to talk about this. And then this uncle helped me, and then this person would help me. And I always had helpers. Like God always just gave me helpers. It's just how it worked. So I don't even know if I answered your question, but hopefully I did.
No, you absolutely did. You absolutely did answer the question. And so, early on, did you start out with your practice? Did you work with other people first? Did you get hired somewhere else and have mentors?
Yeah. So as a licensed clinical social worker, of course, you have to work for somebody for 2 years to be able to get all your licensing hours, which really was very painful for me because I don't like working for other people, and I don't really do well working for other people. Because I think I know better than you half the time. So then, so the first 2 years I did a lot of, mobile therapy where I could just gather up my licensing hours and stuff like that. But when I graduated, so here's a quick version of this. So before I left for New York City, I met my husband, and we met. I'm not even going to go into that because that's a whole other tale, but it wasn't so good, right? So then we met, and I went off to New York City, and he got in trouble doing whatever he was doing. And then we broke up, and then we got back together. But during that time when we broke up, he got saved, and he started going to Bible study in church. And then he got back together with me, and we got back together, and he started saying things like, if you don't go to church, you're going to go to hell, blah, 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 all this kind of manipulative stuff to try to get me to go, which I understand at the time he was scared to death about what I was doing, which was kind of dangerous. So he wanted me to come to this Bible study. So lo and behold, I finally went, because I was just like, fine, I'll go. And I went, and then I met these very weird, nice people that I didn't know existed on the planet. And so then they started asking me all kinds of questions like, hey, do you want to like come study the Bible? And hey, can I come over? And blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay. So then I just said yes. I like I said, I'm curious. I'm like, sure, let's try it. So anyway, this woman who decided to mentor me, basically, which I didn't know that's what she was doing, but that's what she decided she was going to do, started coming over to my house and sharing the Bible. And then one day she was sitting on my deck, and I was 24 years old. And she said, I don't know why God wants me to tell you this, but I'm going back to school. I'm taking one class right now at Widener. And, I'm thinking about maybe opening up a counseling center. And I said, oh, that's really weird, because I told God in my journal before I left for New York City that if I didn't have a singing contract by the time I was 25, I would go back to school and get my master's. Fine. And she was like blown away, because she had no idea. She just thought I was this crazy woman from New York City. She had no idea that I had a degree already in psychology or none of that. So anyway, that was that. We went back to school together, got our master's degree together, and I got married. My whole life changed in like a matter of a year. I went from like this heathen, all of a sudden, like 2 years later, I'm married and in grad school, and I don't even know what happened. So we went to graduate school together. We graduated, and she already had her own floral business. So she's an extraordinarily successful florist. And if I said her business, you would know who she was. But and I'm going to probably get her on the show next. But anyway, she already had a business mindset. So we graduated and we opened up Jacob's Well. So Jacob's Well, so she forced me into like doing very uncomfortable things right away, because counseling is not an issue for me. I could do that like the back of my hand. But business, like you said, was a whole other thing. And so she would make me call up churches and tell them that we exist. And she would make me, get on the phone with different people and stuff like that, which I hated doing. Okay. So, but I did it. I just did what I was told, because I trusted her and I knew that she knew what she was doing. So basically, that's how we started, we started that, and then eventually that split. So we did that for a really long time. And then after my divorce, some other things occurred. And then I can tell you how Joyful Restoration came to be, because that's a whole other wild thing in and of itself. But that's kind of how Jacob's Well started. Got right into private practice after school, and just started from there. I developed my first group. Then I started marketing that to churches. And then we got the churches to let us get office space for free. And so I would give them, I would do groups for them for free for their parishioners. And then they would give us office space. And then from there, I would get clients, because as soon as they would go to my group, then they'd ask about private counseling. And then from there it went. And that's how it started. If that makes any sense.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
amazing. I didn't try to do it all. My friend forced me into all of it. So I mean, I was going to do individual counseling one way or the other, but I had no clue how to start a business. And she was just like, well, just get an office, get a phone number and start. And that's basically what we did, Wow. And that was before social media. That was way before social media.
Yeah, it's interesting because, one of the consistent themes that we have with our guests, Tina, is, really what you're talking about is there was somebody or, a mentor, something like that, really played a big part, in that entrepreneur's journey, so again, because you're an entrepreneur, I mean, yeah, you do counseling and that's what you're known as, but at the end of the day, you are an entrepreneur in the business of counseling. And so, they've all really talked about how critical it was that this person spoke into it or force them into, doing some uncomfortable things, or just was their big cheerleader, hey, you're doing fine. It doesn't seem like it, but you're doing fine. So what you're really telling us is something that we hear quite often. And so for anybody out there that's listening, that's looking at doing a business, find someone, or, seek someone out to be a mentor or someone that you can go to, because again, learning from those people and kind of having them hold you accountable is a big part of a successful business journey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yep. So do you want me to go ahead?
Well, I looked like Jennifer was going to jump in there. I didn't.
Oh, you were pausing for me?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think that, and I get that question a lot, is how do I find a mentor? And the best advice that we can give is finding someone who has already done what you have set out to do, and just asking them, like, will you be my mentor? And thankfully, I already had my dad as my dad, so he had no choice. But yeah, I mean, I think that any successful business that you look at definitely starts with someone believing in you, and really someone that you can go to on the business side, because none of us know how to run a business until we actually do it. So great advice.
So Tina, what's some things that have surprised you on the business side since you've had Joyful Restoration? Some things that from your previous experience of basically having your business partner, and what's been some things that you learned from that time period, and what's different now with Joyful Restoration on the business side?
I think the big difference now is the social media aspect of the whole entire thing. So when I decided to open up Joyful Restoration, and then Jacob's Well kind of like closed its doors and transitioned into just kind of like a referral thing, there was a lot of like pressure now. Like, so it's kind of hard because during that whole time of Jacob's Well, like I always did all the writing. So like I would write I would write monthly, or actually back then I was writing every single week. And then I would just put out newsletters all the time. And then I also did I did all the intakes, and I did a lot of all that stuff already. But then as time went on, the social media part kind of really started to transition from like something like you would just read on your weekly, email, to like everybody doing videos and stuff like that. That was super challenging for me because I don't like it. I'm not a social media person. Like, so I'm not an extrovert, I'm an introvert. So like doing all this stuff and having to put myself out there week after week in video format and try to sell myself, I don't like any of it. It was very, very uncomfortable for me. Sitting behind a computer writing and sending out an article was very different than being in front of a camera or being, trying to like put myself out there in video form. So like I resisted that like the plague. I really did. I was like, I don't want to do this. I don't like social media. I'm not one of these people that's on social media all the time, blah, 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 blah. But like there was no other way to compete, like in the sense of like, this is what people are doing now. So if you watch my early videos, they're painful. So like some of them are just like, I just like would write everything out and then read, and then, and then I had to get used to doing that. And then I do like 5,000 takes, and then I would do 5,000 edits. And I was like, I don't have time for this. So like, that's been very challenging, to the point where now I'm not doing any of that anymore, because I can't see this many clients, run the business, help my children, and do everything else, and then try to like edit and create blah, 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 blah. So now I just get on and pull up something and do a video on it, right? Because that's like the quickest, easiest way I can do it. But that took a long time for me to trust myself enough to be able to do that. I didn't trust, I don't know, like, it's very weird, this whole social media thing. I still find it very interesting that, what's sad and disheartening to me is how people will watch somebody listen to the sound of Cracker Jacks opening, and there'll be 5 bazillion people listening to that, and then like I'm like trying to put a video out there like, listen, you can save your relationship this way, and there's like 10 views. I'm like, what is wrong with you people? You want to listen to Cracker Jacks opening, but you don't want to, like, fix your freaking life, so like that has been quite challenging too, like just to kind of watch, like, man, like that little kid got 4,000 likes on his Cracker Jack box and I got like 2. So like, obviously, like, kids nowadays, they know how to do this. They know the algorithms. They know all that. I don't know any of that. And there's like, people you can hire to do all that too. And they'll just, they'll rip you off left and right too. So it's been quite interesting trying to figure out, like, how do I get into this world and start working in this world? So God just really spoke to me these last 6 months. He's like, Tina, just go on, do short little videos and don't worry about the rest. I have that all figured out, and eventually we'll get there too. So just start doing this. I'm like, all right, I'll just start doing this. So that's kind of where I'm at now with it.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's good because, a couple things, going back, the other thing that we see pretty consistent with our guest is that, there's something's happened, in their life that kind of propelled them into entrepreneurship, and a lot of those things weren't particularly good things. It wasn't like they were, as a matter of fact, they were very difficult and challenging times in their life, that put them at a decision point, which it sounds like that's where you've been a few times, like all of us. There's a decision point here. I can go this direction or this direction, but there's something. So that's the other thing that I think it's important for people who are looking to go into some type of business is, what are some of those previous experiences that at the time were I'm sure very, very difficult, but what can you pull out of those experiences now, to say, wow, I can use that, in my business, whether it's just learning maybe how to make better decisions, how to respond differently, or, maybe it's about how to counsel people or whatever it may be. There's just so many, there are positives, and obviously, you don't have to go through too much of the Bible to also see, that's how God uses these things too. At the time they're trials, tribulations, but they're meant to teach us something. They're meant to grow us in certain ways, for something more than what those situations were in themselves. So, really so many businesses were born out of bad times, so to speak. So that was good. Then the other thing with your social media, where do you see, certainly we are navigating that ourselves. How do you, using social media, clearly it's there. Everybody's looking at things. It's inexpensive. It is an inexpensive way to promote your business in many ways, so beyond just kind of those short videos, anything else that you find is helping you kind of penetrate or, kind of get into, the type of people you're looking to work with?
Anything else here's what
let me ask you this then, like your short videos, and I've watched a couple of them and they are very good. You're very good on screen, by the way. So don't beat yourself up. Do you try to go for like more of a value proposition? Like, what I mean by that is, you're just putting stuff out there, not asking for a direct solicitation of, hey, come see me, but here's something I'm just putting value out there.
Yeah. So yeah, absolutely. I just think that I have to be true to myself. I'm a very authentic person. Like I am what I am. I can't pretend to be something else. And like what I noticed with a lot, and I've not hired, but I've like taken different courses, right, about this stuff. And I cannot mold myself into the things that these people say you should mold yourself into. I don't have the skill set to be that manipulative. So like, and to like perpetually be, putting out an image, you know what I mean? I can't do it. It's just physically impossible for me. So like I just have to be authentic. So I stick with what works for me in my own recovery, because I've been in recovery since, I don't even know, like 22. When I got married, I went right into like codependency recovery. So, my ex-husband was a gambling addict, and then I was raised with addicts. So I was in recovery, like basically from the time I was 12, and different meetings and stuff like that. So recovery is a very familiar, comfortable position for me to be in. Like, I understand that world. I understand the world of so I just try to stick with what I know very well, so that way I don't have to I don't have time to do a lot of like research and stuff. Like, I've done tons of research over the last 20 years. I've read 1,000, how many books. So I just try to stick with what is what's very natural to me, what I know a lot about already. And that way it just is a very natural flow. Like, and I don't have to think too hard about it anymore, which is nice at this point in the game. I've been doing this long enough that if I could go on a situation live or whatever and be like, okay, and I think if you gotta you gotta stay true to yourself. Like, you really have to stay true to yourself. You can't be somebody that you're not. And I think that that's a key aspect in this. And even when Joyful Restoration really started, it really freed me, because like, this is mine. Now I can do whatever I want, so I don't have to fit into a mold anymore, which I'm very eclectic. So like, I like to pull from lots of different theories and ideas and different forms of spirituality. And I love Jesus. I'm a Christian, but I will explore lots of different things, and I'll take what I like from that and I'll put it into whatever I need to use it for, which that gave me a bit of freedom too. So I like being free. I like, being true to myself. And then I feel like that just comes through to my audience the best way, because I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to BS you. I'm not going to tell you something that I know doesn't work, I'm going to walk you through what I know worked for me. And I don't know, it might not work for you, but this is what worked for me. And that's what works for me. Because if I do it another way, then I start getting all kinds of nervous and weird and stuff like that. It just doesn't go very well.
Dempsey Weiss & Associates is a multi-line insurance agency successfully meeting the insurance and financial needs of the landscaping, business contractor, and agricultural community in southern New Jersey and southeastern Pennsylvania since 1989. To learn more, visit us at www.dempseyweiss.com. J Faith Hair Studio, centrally located in southern New Jersey. J Faith Hair Studio is the place to go to become the best version of yourself. Confidence in your appearance is always important, and a great hairstyle is an absolute necessity. Visit jfaithhairstudio.com to book your appointment today.
The world's a mess, and it's getting to be a bigger mess all the time, so I mean, how, like you said, it's like you put stuff out there, but yet people aren't always responding to, things like, on how to, just live, with better relationships and that type of thing. What do you think is holding people back from kind of pursuing that?
I think a lot of it is, false pride. I really do. Like, I think like we all have these defense mechanisms that kind of keep us safe in our own little bubbles in our worlds, stuff like that. And then, the pride, the false pride, which says, well, if I were to admit that I have this struggle, then somewhere that makes there's something wrong with me. And like, nobody wants to think that there's something wrong with them, right? But the truth is that there's something wrong with all of us. And there's not anything wrong with all of us. We're all perfect and we're all complete, messes, right? So we're all trying to evolve in our consciousness, and we're all trying to grow and understand this thing called love and walk out this thing called love. But the thing that blocks people the most is really just this idea that if I admit that something is wrong, then I have to feel this feeling of like I'm stupid or shame or I'm uncomfortable now. And like, I don't know. Like I always tell this story, like when I was 9, I don't even know, I was like 7 or 8. And my dad had a really bad temper. And one day I was across the street at my neighbor's house. And, my mother had to ask the neighbor, an older guy, right? Like older guy, to fix the front post on our porch. We like lived in a twin, and we had this nice little front porch. Anyway, there was a post missing, and he came home and he found out about this, and he took the post and he threw it through our front window on a summer day in the middle of our neighborhood where everybody could see. And I remember thinking, yep, we're that family, right? So like very early on, it was like that idea that something like that shame, like my family was the first family that I got divorced. Like there was just so many things like right from the beginning that just was just like, whatever, it is what it is, like this is what like there's nothing I could do about it, right? So for me, looking at what was wrong was just not uncomfortable for me, because I think it just got like pushed out very early on, like the whole world knows your problems, kid, so better just whatever, not be afraid of it. So it wasn't so hard for me to be like, I got this issue, I need to go get help, or I need to go do this. But for a lot of people who have a facade that everything looks good on the outside, to go inward or to go ask for help it's very painful. It's very embarrassing. They don't know where to put that in their little bubble, how to work through all of that and stuff like that. And like, that's the hardest part. Like a lot of times there's just in my private world with people is just like trying to motivate people to not be afraid to go get help. Because their pride keeps them from wanting to look at whatever it is that they need. And so they just keep trying to look it on the outside over and over and over again until their worlds implode. And then, like couples will come 15 years after the problem started, like, whoa, we're about on the brink of divorce, huh? Yeah, you are, because you didn't ask for help, when you needed to way before because your pride, and I think that's like one of the biggest things that keeps people from getting the help that they need. Especially now, social media makes it even worse,
Yeah, Tina, I was going to say, social media does make it worse. And, everyone's putting their best foot forward on social media. And that's why we see, I think, a lot of the times where these silly, stupid videos get all these views compared to more serious topics or businesses, because sometimes people are looking at social media as an escape.
Right.
And I know that I deal with it inside my business with my employees. There's so much talent behind the scenes, and they put out amazing work on social media, and then they get frustrated that they only got 15 likes. And it is like their heart and soul and their passion. And I'm constantly reminding my team that it's not about the likes. And I know for other business owners, it can be frustrating because you're putting so much time and energy into a social media presence, and then you feel like it's not getting enough likes or not enough people are seeing it. But what is really happening is that being consistent on social media is that you're planting seeds every single day. Even though someone doesn't like it, doesn't mean that you're not, planting seeds into their mind when they finally are like, you know what, I don't even like my hair anymore. I don't like my hairdresser. I keep seeing this girl Jen post all this hair. I've never liked one of her posts, but I'm going to go see her. So, I think we can get caught up in so many different ways on social media of, we're not famous on social media. We're not getting enough attention. We're not getting enough likes. But I truly, as an entrepreneur and a business owner, I don't think that that's so much of what it's about. I think it's just about being consistent, having a consistent message. And like anything in life, when you're consistent and you're passionate, it will work out better for yourself. But yeah, I mean, I'd rather watch something funny than,
You talk about your codependency. Yeah. I know. I get clients tell me all the time that they love my videos and they never write it on social media. And I think a lot of that is too because like they don't want somebody knowing that this is a struggle that they might be having. Right. So, that's another reason I don't worry about it as much anymore. I used to, but now I don't. And, whatever. It's, and I do believe that there are spiritual forces that are at work that work very hard at keeping people who are talking about spirituality quiet, so, and I understand that world too. So even in that, I'm just like, well, whoever is supposed to see my videos is supposed to see my videos, and that's that. And right. Whoever is supposed to come see me is supposed to come see me, and that's that. I don't worry about it anymore like I used to.
Yeah, and I want to make sure that we point out, I love what you said about, being authentic to yourself, especially when it comes to business. I think it's very easy to be cookie cutter, looking at what everyone else is doing, and maybe they're successful in saying, oh, well, that's what they're doing, so that's what I need to be doing. And that's not always the case. I think the most beautiful part about being an entrepreneur is really being a leader and leading from the front and being outside your comfort zone and not doing what everyone else is doing, and being okay with failure, and saying, listen, I tried this, it didn't work, whether that's in our marketing or whatever it is inside our business, and being able to, take a step back and say, this didn't work, so let me try this. But, I'm definitely telling myself that all the time is, trying to be as authentic as possible inside my business is really one of my core values, because it's very easy to get wrapped up in what someone else is doing or what you think you should be doing. And you can kind of lose yourself in that too. Like, wait a minute, I forgot why I even started this in the first place. So I love that.
Yeah. So Tina, tell us,
yeah, just one real quick question. Because one of the things I remember when we had this conversation before, I mean, is there a place, a portal or a place where people can go and say kind of, here's here's what I'm looking for in a counselor, and so, and they can kind of put in the criteria, and then it pops. There is
Psychology Today. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. If you go on Psychology Today, if you go on there, you can put in, what your struggle is, the type of counselor you're looking for, and it'll give you a list of all the counselors in the area that do that. I'm on there. Every therapist I know is on there. So yeah, that's a really nice way to be able to go on and find different counselors.
Good. Because it seemed like that was one of the things where people were, especially during and probably still now we're still in it, I guess, but the pandemic just has really heightened, kind of a need for,
2020 was my busiest year. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that mental health. And it just seemed like people were struggling on how to find counselors, how to, whether it was kind of what they, some of the criteria they were looking for, who took what insurance, that type of thing. So it seemed like there was a lot of challenges there where people were having a hard time just kind of connecting with the right.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because counselors all of a sudden got really booked up really quick. And so there's long waiting lists. And then if you need to use your insurance, that was even longer waiting lists. So private people like me had we had more, like availability in the sense that we're not governed by the insurances per se, but the people that took insurances were like inundated, with especially the teenagers. Like, I mean, like the amount of suicidality and all this stuff just skyrocketed this last year. And everybody was trying to get their kids into therapy. And that got very challenging because they wanted to go through their insurance and things like that. And there was long wait lists and stuff like that. It's different now, but back last year was insane. Yeah. But like I said, there are a lot of websites like Psychology Today that gives you a nice little list of, counselors that, have different skill sets and stuff like that.
Good.
And I think that's really important too, to mention to your audience. I know this isn't a counseling podcast, but like people should interview their therapists. Like they should, look and really go through, a list of people and really pray about the person that they're going to be seeing and ask, like, is this a good fit for me? And, what about this person do I like and stuff like that? Because a lot of people will start therapy and then they quit after a couple of sessions because they don't like the therapist, but then they don't go try to find another one. So like it is important that you kind of do like a little bit of an interview process to see who's going to be a good fit for you.
Yeah, no, that's really good. That's really good advice. So you mentioned 2020 was your biggest year. And my question to you was going to be, what was maybe challenging, but also what were maybe some real high points in 2020 with your business?
When this first started, I thought, I cannot do counseling online. This is impossible. This is so crazy. I can't believe I have to switch my whole entire life onto online. But it was really funny because this is how God's always like this. And like, I have this big vision, right? Like for like, how I don't know when God's going to do it, but like I have a big vision. And part of that vision is me working from home, but in like a little separate little gypsy caravan type of deal, like I have like this other huge vision and it's going to be like a whatever. So anyway, I wanted to work from home for a really long time. And so when this all first started to happen, man, I kicked my heels. I was like, I don't want to go online, blah, blah, blah. How can you do counseling online? You need to be face to face with people. And then you had no choice. So you had to do it. So, of course, there is just always resistance when we first try to do something different. And then God just kind of sits back and just like, all right, Tina, I understand, and he's just so gracious to us the whole entire time. And then I, switched everybody to Zooms and blah, blah, blah. And then I, dealt with my own resistance and understood that this was just kind of what it was going to have to be. And, you got to just get on with the program, right? So it was challenging at first to try to like be able to focus on people via Zoom because it's so different when the person's in your presence and you can feel their energy and you can feel their feelings better and stuff. But it's like, so with Zoom, I had to really learn how to pay attention, like to subtle things that were happening with their body language and stuff like that. That doesn't come as easy when you're with that person because so much of it is like a set, like I can't explain it, but I feel it when they're in my presence. I can feel what they're feeling and different things like that. Whereas on camera, it's a little bit different thing. So I had to like use different, parts of my, like being to be able to learn how to focus. But then eventually it started to come together for me. Right. So, but that was probably the biggest challenge for me with that transition. And then, dealing with people's frustration with it was a whole other thing, like them missing, and especially some of the techniques that I do require in person. So it was very frustrating that year to not be able to do EMDR with people the way I usually did it, to like, have to teach people different body techniques online and stuff like that. And so that was the most challenging part. Now it's shifting back, like a lot of people coming in person again. So it's not so bad, but the really cool thing for me is I didn't have to commute anymore, and I figured out how to do this thing, and it opened me up to like people from all over the place. And now I'm comfortable with it. I'm familiar with it, and it's a part of my regular practice. I like it. It doesn't bother me anymore. So you just have to keep adapting, man. Like that's just the way it's going to be.
Nugget alert.
Yeah, Nugget alert. Keep
Always
adapting.
Yes.
Adapting.
Yeah.
Well, right, because it's interesting, and that's one of the things that we're hearing too from and Jennifer has her own story of how she had to make, adaptations in her business. And certainly we have, Zoom being part of that, where we were used to face-to-face meetings. We even had a guest who did agility training for dogs, and she thought, what am I going to do now? And next thing you know, she realized she could train dogs through Zoom, believe it or not.
Wow.
So, and like you said, now that opened up, really a kind of a new world, because now you're thinking, you don't have to think so small geographically, because now I can do business with people virtually anywhere because of what, the pandemic forced me into. And so,
Yep.
So that's good. I mean, that's, I think, one of the things that from a lot of businesses, people are saying, don't want to go through it again to that extent, that's for sure. But, here's some really good things that did come out of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. More freedom.
Yeah.
For me, anyway. Yeah.
The other thing too, and I know we're running out of time, but I wanted to get this point in, and you said it, and so important is this, you called it, I think, this great vision, right? Is that what you called it?
Yeah.
This great vision? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, very, very critical for people who are looking to start a business or in business. You've got to operate out of vision, because without that, and vision's different from goals, isn't it? Don't you think that's different?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, right. And so, really having that very clear picture in your mind of where you see things going, where you want them to go, because we know there's going to be detours. We know there's going to be, things that happen that's going to knock us off course. But if we don't have kind of that guidepost, that, what we're looking to get to, it's virtually impossible to kind of get it back on track, right? Because next thing you know, you're just kind of getting beaten and battered around by the travails of the day, rather than saying, "Whoa, wait a minute, I just got to get back over here, and that'll get me right back on course again." So that was great, to hear that, you're operating your practice out of this great vision. So, and I think if I heard you right, you're going to change your name someday to Gypsy Counseling or something.
No.
Oh, okay.
No, it'll be Joyful Restoration. But I think that one thing that I think that people don't realize about developing a vision is that they have to feel their way through their vision instead of just thinking about their vision, So like when I practice that bigger vision, I practice what it would feel like to be in that vision. So that way my subconscious can like start to register that more and more and more and more. And then the more you do that, the more your brain just like turns away from things that don't fit in with this feeling, right? It's the same thing with whatever I counsel with people, whether it's their self-esteem or developing boundaries or whatever it is that they have to like work on. What would it feel like if you had this already established in you? That is more important than anything else. So, because once people can hook into the feeling of it, that like downloads into their spirit, and then they like that feeling, right? Because we're so driven by how we feel. So we have to lock in that feeling into our own subconscious. So when I think about that final scene and that vision, and I feel that sense of freedom and that sense of openness and that sense of expansion and that sense of just like joy that I feel when I think of all of it, that's what I'm focusing on. I'm focusing on those feelings. I'm not focusing on how it's all going to come. I have no idea how it's going to happen. That is not my problem. That's God's problem. God will figure that part out. All I've ever done is think about what I've wanted. What would it be like if I had it? And then I don't even know how all this other stuff happened because I never even tried to make it happen. God brought it together, right? I was going to hell in a handbasket. And then all of a sudden, God dropped this person in, into my world that was, you know what I mean? And that person dropped that person in, and that person dropped that person in. But God is always maneuvering all of it. So now I had the thought of being an LCSW, but in my body, I didn't want to do any of this anymore. Right. So, but that initial writing of that kind of like was like an agreement I made. Right. And that agreement goes out into the universe. Right. And then, God's, workers go to work and they start to pull things into your world to bring that agreement into existence for good or for bad, so you have to be really careful what you're putting yourself into agreement with, obviously. So like, that's the other thing, because people get so caught up in the anxiety of, I don't know how, I don't know how, I don't know how. You don't have to know how. Yeah. You just have to focus on that. And then the next thing happens, and then the next thing happens, and then you just say yes. And then you just move through that door, and then you just move through that door, and then you just move through that door, right? So I think that's really important too. Like, even when I went to that first Bible study, or when my uncle said, hey, do you want to be this psychiatrist? Or, hey, do you want to whatever? I'm like, okay, sure. Now, do I want to? No, I don't want to meet anybody or talk to anybody. I really don't. Like, that's a problem I have. Like, I want to like be in my little shell doing my own little thing. I could read books for 8,000 years and be perfectly happy. Right. But I know that I don't know a lot of things. So I'll say yes. And then I'll go through that door, and I'll go through that door. I was like, do you want to go back to grad school with me? Okay. Do you want to go to this thing? Sure, I'll do that. Like, oh, you want to learn how to pray? Yes, let me learn how to do that. Like, do you want to learn how to do this? Yes, I want to learn how to do that. And then it's just kind of keep moving through these open doorways. And then as you do, God just opens the next door, opens the next door, opens the next door. I'm really excited about how he's going to do it. I have no idea how he's going to do it. But I don't worry about that right now. I just worry about what he asked for me right now. And then I focus on how it would feel in that bigger vision. And then somehow he'll pull all that will just start to come together. It's what has happened my whole entire life. So I'm not.
That's good. Yeah, that I like that, because again, that, you start to, you're experiencing it. You're bringing the experience of the vision into your life, so that's, there's no doubt feeling it, is really what's needed for you to kind of probably at sometimes have just the stamina to go that next step, because you're coming off of that, so that's.
And people's anxiety really gets in their way, and then they don't realize that all of the secret agreements that they're in, like with self-doubt and I can't do it and I'm not good enough and blah, 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 blah. And then that triggers all this anxiety. And then they try to override it by just forcing themselves to do things that maybe they're not comfortable yet, instead of dealing with the anxiety that they're experiencing in the moment and the underlying shameful beliefs that might be attached to it. If they would just work on that first, they would get so much further. Do you know what I mean? And then they could, keep going from there. It's fear, I think, most importantly, that keeps us from taking whatever that next step is. And underneath the fear is a lot of shame that says, well, that person's not going to like me. I'm not good enough, blah, 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 blah. So they have to deal with that stuff first, especially in whatever business situation they're in. They're not going to be successful because their energy is saying that they're not. I'm not good enough. So therefore you won't be. Do you know what I mean? Like, that has to be dealt with.
Well, we can keep rolling here. Go ahead, Jen.
So what Tina's telling us is, walking in our vision, we need to be a yes person, right?
Yes, you do. And that means dealing with your crap too, right? Like, you can't just keep being in denial and thinking everything's going to turn out rosy. It doesn't work that way, Well,
and I'm with you, because, you get to certain points in your business and you're like, that's when I call my dad, like, I'm about to do this. Do you think I can afford it? Or I want to hire 3 more people, but, can I afford it? Am I going to go back to not taking a paycheck like I did year 1 of opening my business? And then you just have to tap back into that vision of, this is what we've been working for. It's going to work out the way it's supposed to. So I love that. I wrote that down. Become a yes person. I love it.
The other thing too is, and you're speaking to that, there's that mentor piece that we talked about earlier in the podcast. but also, and it sounds like for those who are listening that even want someone to help coach them in business, you might be a good fit for that. It sounds like to me. So, it might not be that you're, yeah, it might not be that you feel like you're dealing with, crap, but you might be dealing with, again, those doubts and things that, that kind of enter in, and that's where, having a person to help coach you and, whether it's, because again, we advocate that, Jennifer, has a business coach and, that's specific to her industry, but, sometimes it's just having that person just to help you navigate, like the emotional side of being an entrepreneur and, the frustrations and the ups and the downs, and giving you framework on how to work through that so you stay on course. So good stuff. So
yeah, so much good stuff. Like you said, Jack, we could keep right on rolling, but maybe we'll do a part 2.
I'd love to. Sure. Absolutely.
Part 2. Yeah. So everybody stay tuned. But for now, we will say goodbye. We want to remind our listeners that you can send us your questions that you would like for us to answer on our podcast to 2 daughters. That's TWO, 2 daughters and their dad at gmail.com. We will be sure to link all of Tina's social media, whether she likes it or not. We'll be able to link all of her social media in the description box of our podcast. Be sure to go over there and follow, comment, and share, and do the same for us. Don't keep us a secret. We're a good thing over here at 2 Daughters and Their Dad podcast. So till we can all be together again, be kind to each other, and most importantly, be kind to yourselves. We'll talk to you guys soon. Bye-bye.
We want to thank you for listening today. Please subscribe so you never miss an episode. Leave us a positive review. And we want to say thank you to our sponsors, Dempsey Weiss & Associates and J. Faith Hair Studio.